Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Diary of a Sales Engineer. Today we have a really exciting guest with us. I'm Samir Kosser. This is my co-host.
Ryan Kruger.
And today we have Peter E. Cohan. For those of you who don't know Peter, he is very well known. He was one of the first pre-sales folks that I followed on LinkedIn and learned about. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Peter?
Yeah, today I will say here on Diary of a Sales Engineer, we are honored to have one of the godfathers of sales engineering. Peter is a visionary behind the acclaimed books Great Demo and Doing Discovery. His groundbreaking methods have revolutionized how software organizations excel in pre-sale, sales, marketing, and making discovery conversations stand out and demos irresistibly compelling. And I could tell you this personally. When I was trying to break into sales engineering, Peter's name was everywhere. And it really became the go-to sort of guru for me to understand and how to master the craft. And those insights from Great Demo really helped shape and get me into starting my career in pre-sales. With a rich background as an individual contributor, manager, and C-level executive, Peter's experience spans the entire spectrum of business. And so we are excited to have you on today and really discuss the history of sales engineering and how we got to where we're at today.
Hi, I'm Peter. Actually, what I would love is, Ryan, if you could send me the first part of that introduction, that's a heck of a lot better than anything I've ever drafted. I would really appreciate that. So, man,
Absolutely.
so I believe what you asked was, actually, could you ask it again? Because we missed it.
I was saying that we're excited here today to dive into really the history of sales engineering and how we got to where we're at today. I mean, we'd love to
Samir,
hear
he's
it
breaking up again, or
from,
was it me?
He is.
let me
Yeah, it's you,
try
Brian. I'm sorry.
let me try to reconnect here. I will work
All
on that
right.
in the
While
background.
Ryan is figuring that out, I'd love to learn about your journey into pre-sales. I know a lot of us kind of stumble into it, and I'm always curious. Back when you started out, did you know about it? How did you find out pre-sales and sales engineering?
Nobody has ever heard of pre-sales before they get into the business world, as far as I can tell. There's two things here that I think are really interesting. The first is everybody that I encounter seems to have a definition of the starting point of certain portions of history as their own personal experiences. So, for example, if I asked you, Samir, or you, Ryan, when, in your opinion, did pre-sales as a function begin? Well, in your experience, when did pre-sales begin?
Yeah. Well, I guess when did pre-sales start from like my personal career perspective, or like pre-sales from all time? Like
Well,
when?
that's really my point, is that many people associate those two things together. I was watching a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and the person that was talking about the history of pre-sales did begin pre-sales, in her opinion, somewhere, if I recall correctly, around 2006 or 2007, which is when she first entered the profession. Now, my perception of this is that pre-sales as an occupation has been going since Archimedes first built his screw pump, because he needed someone to explain how it worked to people that didn't believe that water could be flowing uphill, for example. Um, Even the term sales engineering, I believe, comes from the automotive industry way back in the 20s and 30s, for the same purpose, to enable people that were more technically focused to explain what was going on, for example, with an automatic transmission. How does this work, and so forth. So there's a little bit of a sort of a personal blocking with respect to where history begins. And I would actually urge people either interested in pre-sales or in pre-sales to extend their vision backwards as well as looking forwards. In my personal history, I was in the lab. I was a chemist working in the laboratory, working on a range of different projects, a lot of which were problem solving. What happens when the product goes bad? Trying to find solutions to that. In my spare time, as a result of a very hot backpacking experience, I ended up being the first person in my knowledge to successfully freeze dry beer, but that's another story. um, And I was intrigued by what at that time was called technical marketing or technical services, because these people went out and did presentations. We did posters, which you do in the sciences, which means you stand up literally in front of a series of posters and talk about your research if anybody's interested. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed connecting with customers, and I was kind of tired of spending all my time with a freeze dryer. And so I got hired into this technical services role, and that's what it was called. I was called a technical services manager. That was my first pre-sales role. I had nobody to manage, by the way. Um,
And what
and
year was
and then
this?
from that was 19 that was 1984, if I recall correctly, somewhere in there. So
All right.
1984. Joined my first software company in 1985, actually on the product management side of things. Went through many, many different iterations. The interesting story, though, that I want to recount for you is a few years later, somewhere around 2000, where I was leading a group of about 100 people. I was the head of a business unit. We'd grown up to where we are hiring a fair number of sales, pre-sales, and other people. We call them application scientists, by the way. Um, and we got to the point where we needed to get a CRM system. And so I was the buyer, and I was embarking on one of my first buyer's journeys. I had bought tools before. We need 22 copies of SolidWorks. That's easy, place to purchase order. But this one required a lot of decision making based on what are our needs, what's going to fit. Well, of all the vendors we spoke with, and the five that we looked at intimately, only two did any discovery.
Oh, wow.
First of all, yeah, only two did any discovery. And by the way, one might ask oneself, how much has that actually changed over the past 24, 25 years? And the answer is sadly very little, but let that go. The resulting demos were stunningly awful harbor tours. These were all CRM systems. They were all 2-hour demos. They started with, here's how to set up the system. Here's how to enter a new record. Here's how to launch a campaign. Here's how to. At the end of all these demos, our minds were they were reeling. We couldn't differentiate one vendor from the other. They were terrifically awful. And I got the team together because I had this flash of insight. I got
Hmm.
the team together and I said, what do you guys think about those demos? And Samir, what do you think they said?
They probably couldn't tell the difference. I would have been mind numbed by the end of it. Like I was just,
We
it
were.
seems
We were all
really
mind
hard.
numb.
Is it worth even investing in a technology like this? Are we better off just doing it the way we're doing it today?
That's a very interesting point because we were close to going to a no decision, but we recognized that the problem was acute enough that we needed to address it, even though the options were not looking thrilling. Well, the team said they were awful demos, they were painful, they were too long, there was no point. They were teaching us training, not showing us what good things we could do with the systems. And I
Yep.
said, you know what, guys? I got bad news. We have been doing the same thing to our prospects and customers as what we just endured. And that's when I said, we've got to flip our demos upside down. We've got to focus on a job title by job title basis what people want as the outcomes and the deliverables from using these tools. And that was actually the beginning of the great demo methodology. And we had the chance to harden it through production use. It was actually, believe it or not, it was originally called Power Demos by my colleague Mark until I just felt, I don't know, it felt over the top. I felt Great Demo was an easier way to sort of promote it.
Yeah.
Long story short, that is where the methodology began, and that's where the scales truly fell from my eyes. It was when I was sitting in the buyer's seat. So there you go.
So I guess that was. It sounds like that was the first time you were sitting in the buyer seat, and that was the first time you felt what a bad demo felt like. If you were to flip it on like seeing how demos have established and what has like a good demo or like what am I looking for? The way demos have changed since people have been recognizing that they shouldn't be training, like they shouldn't be just, hey, this is where you click, this is what you should do. How have you noticed since that first demo in 2000 to demos now? How have you noticed them improving?
Well, I would say that sadly, the gross majority of demos have not improved. The technology has changed and improved, But the demos are still. Let me give you a tangible example. I'm on the whatever it is, the panel for Story Lane. It's doing a demos recorded
Hmm.
demos contest, and I this morning I just finished watching approximately 30. I don't know, 30 demos that range in length from a couple minutes up to way too long, like 12 to 15 minutes of recorded demos. And of them, I ranked two out of 35 as, hey, these are really good. These are intriguing. They captured my interest. They had a good series of messages. They discussed the problem set. They discussed the benefits that one might anticipate. They focused on deliverables and outcomes. All of the others, do the math, focused on here's how the system works, or even worse, here's how you use the system, here's how you set up a form, here's how classic ancient demo technology or practices, if you will, of let me teach you everything that I can about the software. So Samir, the sad answer to this is while I've been a voice crying in the wilderness, that's actually been the problem. It's the wilderness and not the heart of the city where there are more ears to listen and pay attention and even more take action. And
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I guess you saying that just makes me wonder why do we almost it's like almost naturally we're going to a training mode instead of like a demo mode. And in your experience, like why do you think almost as SEs we are naturally into that training phase instead of the demo phase? If we could
We
differentiate.
are we are victims of momentum. We are victims of momentum. We do the same thing over and over unless we're given a shove in a new direction. And what I see happen over and over and over again, people are onboarded and they are taught the standard demo, which may or may not be intended for delivery to prospects and customers. But initially, these are designed to teach you guys and me about the software. What does it do? How does it work? What are the cool things? What are our differentiators? Well, let me ask the both of you. Have you both gone through that experience where you had to learn a standard demo, the bronze demo, the gold demo, and then regurgitate it? They're both nodding their heads in affirmative.
Yep.
Well, we just
100%.
yeah, we just did a podcast recently about like the difference between a good, a great, and an excellent SE, and we really believe that like the first level of sales engineer is somebody that regurgitates the first level, the bronze demo, so to speak, right? The one that you see
Yep.
on day one, and they stick to the exact same script. They never innovate, they never practice, they never get used to it. And I do think that it's what ultimately sort of like establishes what differentiates a good from a great SE is somebody just comes in, they see the demo for the very first time, and already the gears are churning in their head of how can I make this demo so much better than what it is today? Why would I take somebody else's words and use them to demonstrate the product? I need to use my words and my voice to answer objections and storytell.
So there's two dimensions here that you're touching on. I'm delighted that you've peeled these layers back and exposed them. The first dimension is the structure of the demo itself. The second is the mode and, if you will, practice of delivery. So, for example, and I don't want to blow my own horn, but I guess I will because it's the truth. So way back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, I was your go-to. I will immodestly state I was your go-to person for demos for the products that I represented. I went all over the world inflicting really well delivered traditional demos on my audiences. And that's dimension number one. I got really good at my talk track, at my mouse sequence, at my timing, when to throw in a joke, when to change it up for Europe and use a European joke, et cetera, et cetera,
Mhm.
et cetera. So that's a dimension that people can contemplate, showmanship, basically. But the real change comes when you look at, as you're saying, Ryan, the architecture or the clickstream, if you will, of the demo itself. So that's where the real change begins. And this goes back to the victim of momentum point, because most of us will simply repeat what we believe works. And I say believe works because if we don't test and actually run the experiments, we don't know what is better or what is worse. That's the science background speaking. And it was only when I had that shock, that revelation of holy moly, we've been doing the same thing to our customers and prospects that we just received. And that's when I went, oh my God, we really got to change what we're doing. Um, I want to come back to another point in a moment. Ask me a little bit later, what is an expert? But before we do that, I do want to talk about job titles, because one of the things that really struck me about the CRM system demos was there are easily 13 distinctly different job titles that might be beneficiaries or users of a CRM system, ranging from pre-sales practitioners, pre-sales managers, salespeople, sales managers, CROs, marketing, enablement, and on and on. How could a single unitary demo satisfy all 13 of those job descriptions? And the answer is that's how you end up with a 2 or 3 or 4 hour demo, because it endeavors to show everything to everybody. When the right answer, at least based on what I've learned so far, and we may change in the future, is to slice it apart and address job title by job title. So if you're talking to a CRO, your demo of a CRM system for that CRO might be 3 screens, your
Mhm.
current forecast, your pipeline, and any deals or opportunities that really need to be inspected or helped along. That's it. Your demo for a CRO might be 4, 5, 6 minutes, basta. That's all. On the other hand, you've got a salesperson who says, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to use this thing." They want me to actually enter records into the system. That demo is going to be different. The first question you have to ask is, what is this system going to do for this job title? What's in it for them? Those are called whiffets. What's in it for them? You guys know that. And once you begin to take a look at things from that perspective, clarity is achieved. But you still need guidance on how to do it, which is why I wrote Great Demo and why we have Great Demo workshops. I've been talking too much. I'll let you guys go.
Well, I think that what stuff that's coming to mind here, and I would love to get your take on this, is yeah, it's very important to have persona specific demos. But what do you do when you are in a room with 4 different personas and you got 45 minutes to run through this in order to get a shot at the next demo? Like, and you got the CRO in the room. If we keep the CRM example, right? We have the CRO in the room, we have enablement in the room, we have an SC, and we have an AE in the room. Like,
Okay. So
how do I?
answer is very simple. Just as you would in real life, who has the strongest opinion in that room? Who's the most important person?
Well, it's the one with the purse, so I'm guessing that'd be the
Right.
CRO.
So let's do a specific demo for him or her or them, satisfy their interest. At which point, and I've seen this happen and had this happen numerous times, they may literally say, "Hey, folks," as they look at, well, their iPhones today, they say, "I have another meeting I'm going to go to. I'm totally comfortable with this solution. You guys can stay here and torture the vendor as long as you like, but I'm good." Okay? Boom. That is a chunk. That is the first slice of how you take a long monolithic demo and you slice it up into components that are aligned to individual job descriptions. So I would probably go with the salesperson next. I would say, okay, salesperson, let's talk about your needs, your interests, what you've told us, what we learned in discovery. Let's talk about how the system can support those and in fact provide you with some surprising benefits. We go through that salesperson scenario in as much depth as they have interest. We then go to the pre-sales person, and we then go to the enablement person. We do it in the order of power. And each engagement or sub-engagement is its own demo, starting with, let's review what we understand about your situation. Let's then show you the deliverables that you're looking for. Home Run is a perfect example of this. I worked with Brian on trying to help him begin to do that a little bit. And then in as much depth as you would like, dear prospect, will go and show you how it works. And that's a hugely important thing. Let me give you an example. Do either of you have or have ever driven a hybrid car?
Yes.
I have not.
Okay. You've not ever driven a hybrid?
No, I never have. I gotta admit what I
Oh,
gotta admit, never have.
there you go. There's always an outlier. For every generalization, there are meaningful outliers. Samir, you've driven hybrids.
Yep.
Do you care about how the hybrid figures out when to turn off the gasoline engine and when to turn on the electric motors?
No, I don't care
Okay,
about that.
can you imagine a demo where, because the car manufacturer was so excited about that technology, they went through it in gory detail?
I would want to go and leave as fast as possible.
You would go to somebody else. So
Yes.
that is what we term peeling back the layers, but only in accord with your prospect's depth and level of interest. And there's an amazing thing you can do to find out how interested they are at any particular point in the demo. Any idea what that might be?
Call
Ask
them
them.
out. Yeah.
Ask them. And it's very simple. It's would you like me to go deeper? Would you like me to share how this works? Is there any desire to take a look at any of the options? 9 out of 10 times, people at a certain point will say, no, I'm good. Thanks, I get it. Let's move on to the next topic, the next point whatsoever. So, Samir, this is a hugely important concept. There is no such thing as one demo fits all.
Yeah.
You slice and dice in accord with the job titles, and I say job titles rather than persona because persona is kind of squishy. A persona could be marketing. Well, there's a big difference between the head of marketing, the VP, marketing managers, marketing staff members, marketing communications, for example. Each of them have different sets of needs and objectives and so forth. So job title is what we recommend in the Great Demo and Doing Discovery universe. Slice it up by job title, focus on their needs and their interests, show them the deliverables, the outcomes, and then invite them to tell you how deep they feel they need to go. That's great demo.
I think like something you call out there is a point that I see happen all too often in pre-sales, especially for sales engineering specifically, is we have a tendency to over-explain. We are technical thinkers. And when we're asked a question, sometimes the technical piece of us comes out. We get really excited to dive into how it works, how it functions. But if you're talking to a CRO or a CAO or a CFO, guess what? They likely just don't care. And when you go on that 5-minute spiel on how it works and how it functions, guess what's happening? They're already picking up their phone, they're checking emails, they're totally tuned out. And yet you're thinking, wow, this demo went great. I nailed that question. But in reality, you didn't because you lost who you were speaking to as a part of your audience. You always have to remember, who are you speaking to? What do they want to hear? And why do they want to hear it? I always try to frame it up. When I hear an objection, what's the why behind it? Do I even need to go into tier 2 or tier 3 level of technical explanation? In this case, I probably just keep it to tier 1. I might even just say, yes, we can do that. I might not need
So
anything else.
this brings up one of the other key elements of the methodology, which is that you park questions that you do not need to elaborate answers to at that point in time. So I teach that there are 3 types of questions. There's great questions, which you answer right away, good questions, which you park for later, and stupid questions, which come from hostiles and people that are just stupid, which we call good questions, but it's on that third finger, if you will. And you park the good questions and the good questions for later, where you can go into as much. It's just the same idea. You give a crisp answer, and then you ask, "Is that sufficient? Would you like to go deeper?" Technical people. Ryan, you're in the security space, right?
I'm in the AI finance space. So handle
Oh,
some tier 1 questions around security, integrations, maybe a little bit of tier 2, but we start getting into tier 3, then I got to loop in some other resources as a part of those
yeah.
calls.
And it's probably as you're phrasing these tier 2 and tier 3 questions, that you park them, you put them
Mhm.
on a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, and you say, This is a really good question. It deserves more development than we need or would like to invest right now. Let me capture it up here on this virtual whiteboard. Have I captured that correctly? Great. What I'd like to do is defer this until later. Is that acceptable to you, dear prospect person? Prospect says great, because they see you've captured it and you're not just ignoring them. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people say, oh, that's really important, we'll get to it later, and then it's gone. But that is a professional and elegant way to deal with these kinds of situations. Imagine you've got a CRO in the room. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen either in person or recorded demos where there's, a C-level person in the room and a person from IT on that same team. The IT guy, right as Ryan is logging in and saying, we've got 3 different layers of security in the login system. And the IT guy says, oh, really? Tell me about them. And Ryan is just like, it's like fishing. And he's reeled in, tick, 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 because he's now obligated to talk about it. And that's a perfect example of how traditional demos get hijacked. This willingness on the part of those of us with technical or perceived technical backgrounds to answer everything as deeply and acutely as possible is incorrect. It's incorrect.
Yes.
It's you say, you know what, since we've got a number of other people in the room, that's a great topic. Let me capture it up here, dear IT person. We can come back to it at the end, and you can beat me up about our security as much as you want then.
Yeah, something that Brian always tells me is my boss. He always says, "Don't break into jail." And what you just described is like, yeah, there's 5 layers of security versus yes, we have security. It's like saying those 5 layers. What are those layers? And then you dive into it. So like, try to. It's almost like you're setting yourself up for stepping in a bear trap, depending on
A bear
who's.
trap in a jail.
Yeah. I did want to bring back up. You said to bring up experts, and we parked that. Let's not forget about it. So, what do you mean by
Yeah.
defining experts?
So Ryan started this off, and it's a lovely topic. Novices, let's just talking about the world of pre-sales and demos, for example. Novices are learning the demo. They're learning about the features, the functions, they're learning the customers, the prospects, the high probability use cases, the third parties, the integrations. There's a lot to take in. And they're spending their time learning that. That's what a novice is doing. And as a result, if the novice is asked to deliver a demo, they will deliver the standard demo, hopefully competently. Journeymen, on the other hand, understand the connections between the software, the needs, different job titles. They've got the experience to know how to do the mapping. And they do it, typically speaking, they do it well within the context of their experiences and trainings. They're confident, they know how to handle most of the outlier situations, and they do it over and over and over and over again. And that's what a journeyman is. So that begs the question, what's an expert? And when I'm doing, or I was doing great demo workshops, I would actually do this same soliloquy here and say, so what is an expert? And people would say, X, Y, Z. And I'd say, okay, yeah, those are all good. In my mind, an expert is someone who heeds that voice in the back of their heads that as they're doing something that says, you could probably be doing that bit better or differently, and takes action on it. And that is one of the hardest things to do as a human, to make a change from something that we believe is working just fine, to run that experiment and say, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to ask for feedback. That's a very brave thing to do in the world of software, particularly if you've got a salesperson breathing down your neck and says, this demo has got to be perfect. Don't you blow it. It's the biggest deal in my bag this year. But it is the right strategy. Being an expert means taking a chance, running the experiment, listening to that voice in the back of your head. That's what caused great demo methodology. That was a shouting, screaming voice, and it wasn't in the back of my head anymore. It was flung into my face by being. We spent, when you think about it, there were 8 people in the room in these demos. I remember these intimately. So we had approximately 5 2-hour demos with 8 people in the room. That's 2 full working weeks of time squandered on listening to people prattle on about how you enter a new CRM record. So Yeah, so Ryan, that was a really good point. Samir, thank you for bringing it up.
Mhm.
This is a challenge for everybody in the audience that's listening. Take that small chance. If you're working with a an experienced, mature salesperson, and you say you want to do something differently, bring them into that play. Let them know what
Mhm.
you want to do, what their role is in it. It, by the way, your audiences, if you want to engage an audience, tell them you want to run an experiment. You're going to try something different, and you want their opinion on it. And what all of a sudden will happen? Well, is what you guys tell me.
I mean,
Be
I think the
amazed.
audience,
Yeah. Like
They're
it's that wonder moment that kind of like takes over when something feels so authentically true, and they have this moment of real connection with you because it's no longer the standard out of the box demo
canned.
that you've given 100 times over. It is this new unique thing that you said, hey, I want to show you. Are you here with me for the ride? And when they're there with you for the ride, they're like, wow, that ride was actually awesome, and they can feel the authenticity of what just took place.
And in addition, they are paying much more attention,
hmm
much more attention. So there you
yeah,
go.
I think
that's
like something I'll chime in there with, like especially from a sales front, because I think it's great to always innovate more when it comes to the demo. Unless you're selling every demo that you do, odds are like there's ways to make the demo a lot better. And it's about trying to identify where and how to actually make those bits of the demo a little bit better. And if you strive to
Yeah,
just push yourself,
this is a very intriguing topic. I've identified, um, labeled three types of change. There are step change is where you're you're moving the greatest distance. A step change was moving from horses to automobiles, automobiles to cars. Um, I'm sorry, automobiles to cars, automobiles to airplanes, for example. Major changes in what you could do, the speed, the options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a step change. And by the way, great demo and doing discovery do represent step changes in those two areas of practice. Optimization is the second thing, and that's where you're continually improving your practice. And it's important, and the effort or the cost of the change is well rewarded in terms of the returns. So, Ryan, what you're talking about there in terms of making changes to your demos, um, if you see tangible gains as a result of this, you see increased conversions, you see more attention, you see better questions, you see more comprehension. Those are productive optimizations on the existing pathway. The third area is called refinement. And the example I had of this was this ridiculous cup holder throne that could be placed in a car, which held not it supported, it was a single cup holder position. It supported like two other cup holders and a sandwich holder and a book reader and I don't know what else. That I call refinement, which means, well, you are still making improvements, he did with air quotes, but the cost is not repaid by the investment. So this is one thing to be cautious and be constantly evaluating. Is what I'm doing really moving the needle, or is it simply polishing the needle?
yeah, that's a great thing to think about. Another thing I always tell even new SEs, old SEs is nobody knows your demo script. Maybe you're a sales rep, but your audience doesn't know what you're going to do. Your audience doesn't know that you're going to take this action and then this action. So if you change up the performance, it's going to be all the same to them. And I think because we give it so many times, so often, we tend to be like, oh, this is the way to do it because this is how I've always done it. And they're going to know if I change it up. It's not true. They're not
Well,
going
your
to.
sales team, the balance of the sales team will know if you change it up, but that actually can be an equally challenging group to convince to change, as we all know. Here's an insight that I love to teach. When you're trying to decide what is it that the prospect needs to see, ask yourself, what would the prospect do on a Monday morning when they first come into their home or work office and open up your software? What do they do? And the answers are illuminating. Managers and above, they're looking at dashboards, they're looking at status, Where are we with respect to where we need to be? Where are there problems that need to be addressed? Where are there opportunities that need to be exploited? Where are there exceptions that need to be understood? Staff members are looking at their to-do list. What do I have to do today? How much of it do I have to do? And how can I do it most as rapidly as possible? Those points of view on Monday morning tell you the best places to do what?
Start your
To,
demo.
to start your demo.
You have me
Now,
thinking right now that I actually need
yeah,
to re-envision my demo a little bit. I'll tell you, like that's
Dude.
hitting me pretty hard right now. So I might move it around.
Yeah, no, I just like really rethought how I would open up own demo as you were speaking. I was like, that's a great way to think about it. So right away, you got both Ryan and I's wheels
Mhm.
turning in our minds. Yes, he should be back in a moment.
Some minor issues with the recordings today. Don't worry. We're all SCs. We're figuring it out
There
on
we
the
go.
fly. This is the
This is
right crew
prime
of
time
people to
SE.
figure out the technical challenges happening on today's recording. Okay, I moved like mini offices here in the WeWork.
I have to tell you real life funny stories that I've seen multiple times. I cannot tell you how many times I would see demos where some graphics garbage or some anomaly would appear on the screen, and the presenter, the pre-sales person, would point to it and say, "See that? Shouldn't be there." This is one of these personal discipline things. You simply have to note it in your own mind and say, okay,
Mhm.
maybe they don't know, the audience doesn't know should it be there or not. You just keep going. And then talk to
I
development
mean, you
effort.
direct
Pardon?
you direct them where you want them
Mhm.
to be focusing on. I do magic on the side, a lot of like card magic, and a lot of that misdirection is guiding the audience to exactly where you want them to be focused on. Even if something is good, there's been so many times where stuff has just gone wrong, and I've been like, I messed up the trick. I have no way out of this, and you just focus on something else. They don't know that it's gone wrong. So to your point, like something goes wrong and you have a mishap, just keep going. Nobody's really paying attention other than you.
And there's no need to apologize. From sales folks, like I don't like it when you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, look, you just got to keep moving along. You just keep the story going, pull the misdirection, move on to the next thing, and you just go onwards like it was always supposed to be that way. Oh, you know what? That's actually taking a little bit long. Let's actually pivot here. I wanted to go there anyways. You asked a great question earlier on. Let's actually jump right into that.
Now
Boom,
you
done.
mentioned a key word for me, and that the word is stories and storytelling. Um, and there's all different kinds of opinions, most of them wrong, about storytelling in demos and in sales situations, so forth. But I want to support one that I think people often don't contemplate. So I'm going to test you guys. The punchline of this story is slow and steady. You finish it for me.
Wins the
Wins the
race.
race.
Okay, slow and steady wins the race. Now, what's that story? What's the name of that story?
The
It's
tortoise
The
and the
tortoise
hare.
and the
tortoise and the
hare.
hare. Yeah.
Okay. What is the moral? What is the takeaway message of that story?
Uh, don't sprint. I don't know, go slow and you still cross the finish line
Yeah,
first.
that's it.
Well, I mean, part of it is like don't get cocky either,
Don't get
right? The
cocky.
hare was like, oh, I'm way ahead. I can take a nap. I'll be fine.
Okay, so here's the fun question. When was that story first collected and by whom?
There's a great book on this called Made to Stick. I guess I don't know. It's a very good book about how these ideas come to
It's in
play.
my
Oh, you got it right there.
shelf, yeah. So I was going to come back to that. So the answer to my question, Samir, do you know?
I do not know.
So it's one of Aesop's fables. So Aesop, who lived, it was a sunny day in ancient Greece, approximately 2,600 years ago, collected that story. And I say collected because I think they were in the lexicon prior to that. Collected it and chiseled it into rock. What's really intriguing about that story are three sets of things. The first is the moral of the story, which is my son or daughter or other, if you just persevere and work hard and steady, you will do well in life. That's the moral, okay? It is a boring as all hell moral. It is not exciting. It's not interesting. It is not a Marvel movie in any form or regard. But it's a life lesson. And it's a life lesson that the storyteller originally wanted to communicate and pass down to the next generation, the next, and the next. And by wrapping that boring meme, it's a meme, inside a story that Ryan pointed out has the made to stick excellent storytelling parameters. It's relevant, it's real, it's got an element of surprise, it's relatable. I forget what they all are. But that story has lived for 2,600 years. So what does that tell us? That it tells us another angle in terms of storytelling, which is if you have a message that you want to make sure your audience remembers in a demo or a discovery conversation, you communicate the message as a fact, a statement. You can apply an analogy or a metaphor, which is a really good approach and another whole topic. But if you wrap it inside a compelling story, like, oh, there was another customer just like you, suffering the same problem, they blah, 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 blah. And man, all of a sudden there was a thunderstorm and the computer systems all went down, but because they had installed this DR routine just the day before, they were saved and everybody was, heroes, blah, blah, blah. If you can wrap an important message inside a compelling story like that, it will live not just for that demo, but here's the fun bit, it gets retold by your customer or prospect because people can retell stories with about 80% accuracy, even by just hearing them once, if it is a made-to-stick compelling story. By the way, a day in the life is not a compelling made-to-stick story. It is simply taking the hell that somebody does in an 8-hour period and compressing it down to is typically an hour or 45 minutes. So there you go.
Oh man, that's great. It's great to think about. I think Ryan and I have been talking about this over the last few episodes of bringing that customer story in, or bringing just I met this guy at a conference and they had a similar issue. So it's really awesome to hear it coming out of your mouth because it like validates what we've been saying, and we're on the right page.
Yeah, a story.
Just doing a little.
There's sales management and many managers say wrap a story around your demo. And by that they mean a narrative, a logical sequence of events. That's boring. A Marvel movie follows the American hero 12-step drama just religiously. You can plan on it. And that's a very, very successful story type. That's pretty difficult to do in a demo. But even in a 1 minute, if you listen, I hate to use this as an example, if you listen to commercials, many commercials embody a mini success story with an element of surprise. They have all the elements of Chip and Dan Heath in Made to Stick. They do it in 30 seconds. They do it in 60 seconds. So by studying some of those methods, we can apply some of them to the fabulous world of demos and discovery.
I think that's amazing. I always, growing up, I used to love the 30-second, 30 or 60-second infomercials that would come up. And I always dreamed one day of actually doing one of those. I thought it'd be so fun
sorry for
to have to craft something. It's so quick. How can you engage it in 60 seconds? I thought that'd be such a fun job. And like the ones that are great at it were the ones that were on every commercial. Why? They were engaging. You wanted to buy the product. You wanted to watch the commercial.
Now we're talking psychology. There's some self things. If you ask 99% of the business population what they do, Ryan, what do you do?
I'm a technical storyteller. I have it wrapped up right there.
Okay, that's better than the other 98%. Samir, shall I put you on the spot? What do you do, Samir?
We can put me on the spot. So, it depends on who I'm talking to. I'll say I slang software. It's my casual.
Okay,
I'm
that's
slaying
good, man.
software.
You
That-
guys are
If I'm talking to my homies, I'm slinging software.
curiously above average. Curiously above average. So ask me what I do.
What do you do,
Have
Peter?
you ever seen a bad software demo or suffered through a bad discovery conversation?
All the time.
Now what just happened is two things. What just happened in your mind?
I envisioned a time that I did,
So
or or how I
you
felt.
self-qualified as a prospect for me. If you'd said, no, no, can't say that I've ever seen a bad demo, I would have said, okay, great, fine. I teach people to get to the point. That would be my other thing. But that's right, you
nice,
sling
nice.
software. But what I used is I called it a provocative question, which is to turn it around to say, here's the problem that I'm looking to solve. And if it resonates with you, well, you already know the problem, and hence you're already queued up to hear what might I be able to do to address it. It's called a provocative question, and it's a heck of a lot better than the 99 percenters who say, I help blah, 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 blah with their blah, blahs. There you
It's
go.
almost like a Mad Lib there. I help blah 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 do blah blah blah.
It fills it in. Hey, gentlemen, I have to wrap this up in about 2 minutes. Is
Mhm.
that acceptable or?
That is, I was about to
Absolutely.
ask, if you were to leave some lasting knowledge here, from some final thoughts from Peter. It's been an amazing discussion so far, and there's been a lot of nuggets that I'm going to go back and re-listen to. But if you were to have some 1 minute, uh, final thoughts here, what would you say?
You just used an expression that this I can leverage here. Dig beneath the nuggets on the surface. Everybody today is skimming for nuggets. They're reading posts on LinkedIn that are no more than a paragraph and a half, and they're saying, "Wow, that's amazing." No, it's not. They're generalizations. There's often silliness involved. Dig deeper. I would encourage people to go and actually read an entire page and ask themselves, what have I learned and should I go deeper? I think today we're suffering from people's inability to focus their attention and really try to learn something for a period of time. We're all busy, 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 busy. I only have time to read this real quick thing. I'll note I won't get to this. I'll get to it later or never. So my guidance at this point, go deeper. Challenge yourself.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, thank you so
Well,
much for coming on the podcast. We appreciate you sharing some knowledge with everyone out there that's curious and hungry to either break into this field or wanting to get better. Anything else you want to add in today before we let you go?
Yeah, if anybody's interested in reaching out to me, it's pcohan, Cohan, at greatdemo.com. And we have a ton of mini nuggetized blog posts, rich articles, and even books on our website's resources pages at greatdemo.com. And I would encourage everybody in pre-sales, if they haven't already thought to do so, you guys got to get your hands on home run.
I appreciate that, Pete.
Awesome. Thanks so
All
much.
right, gentlemen.
Talk to you soon. Bye, Peter.
All
All
right,
right.
Samir, what are your thoughts here?
Uh, there's a lot of thoughts. That was awesome. This is actually my first time ever speaking to Peter one on one, or whatever we want to call this, one on one. And there was a lot in there. I think even just thinking about what does a Monday morning look like with
Mhm.
your prospects when they open up your software. That was huge. That like made me just completely rethink how I go about demoing. So much to the point where before I go into software, being like, all right, come with me. Imagine you just
Mhm.
walked into your home office. It's 8 a.m. You just got your coffee. You're opening up your computer. This is what you're going to see. And kind of setting the stage in that sense. That's one thing that popped out. There was so many other things. I think the fact that he was called a almost like a technical marketer first, but almost doing like SC related stuff, that was interesting to me. And the coming from a science background, my wife's doing her PhD right now, and she does poster presentations. And so, right when he described that he would be doing poster presentations, standing in front and talking to people that cared, I was like, oh, I've actually seen that. I know exactly what you're talking about. What's some things that stood out to you?
I mean, the Monday morning thing is like one of those moments that's like such a big aha moment. You're like, oh, wow. But why am I doing it this way? I should be, like that's not something that they're going to see all the time. Why am I starting there? Right. So I think
Mm-hmm.
re-envisioning the starting point for a demonstration is something that I need to take out of here and honestly rethink about a little bit further. And I think like just innovating off of the current demo path that I have today, right? Like I think there's steps that I can take to improve it or refine or sort of polish the sword, so to speak. And I think it's like, really hearing somebody like Peter is one of those moments that just, for me, like looking back on my career as I was trying to get started in pre-sales and having the opportunity now to have him on the podcast just feels very surreal to a certain degree. And just be able to learn from somebody like that is really amazing. And you see the expertise come out in so many different areas, right? Like all the technical storytelling that, he did today on the podcast and being able to relate it to what is happening during a demo. Like I just find it to be ultra fascinating and, feel very appreciative that, we got to experience that here live.
Yeah, I even like I don't know necessarily we can call it role playing, but where it was just he kind of used us to go through an experience when he like asked us how do we describe our work, and then he showed us how he did it, and I kind of fell right into his so-called trap. But
Mhm.
you know, it wasn't like he set me up or anything, but that was I was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, no, that's that's a very excellent way of doing it, and then it just gets you thinking, okay, how can I apply this in my day to day
Mhm.
in order to make it better. I also really like the definition he had for expert,
Mhm.
where an expert is able to listen to that voice in their head to try something a little bit more new and something that, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, I don't know if it's not, but I'm going to try it anyways to see the reaction of my prospect and of the audience. And I think that like a true expert is willing and always redefining what does great look like. Just because we've been doing it this way for so many years doesn't mean there's not a better way to do it.
Mhm. I think like, for me, I try to do a lot of that stuff more frequently. I don't think I'm doing it necessarily intentionally to be an expert level. Sometimes I'm just doing it more or less because I'm on multiple demos in a given day and I don't want to hear the same thing twice. Or I don't want to exit and do the same thing over and over again. So I'll just try something new. And when I do try something new, look, sometimes it doesn't land. Like that's first
Yeah.
and foremost, right? But sometimes it does and you see the prospect crack up or you see the prospect smile and get really engaged and you're like, oh, okay, what did I do right there? Like, how do I incorporate that again? Was that just part of today's natural flow that we went there? Or is that something that I can maybe incorporate back in for a future call? Would that work again? Or was that just a one-off situation? So, some of it for me is just like curiosity and ultimately like kind of like I don't want to repeat the same thing twice. I think that's a little boring. And so I
Yep.
just try to keep it fresh to keep myself fresh. Sometimes you wow yourself, you have these moments, oh, whoa, I said that. I kind of like that. I might want to reuse it. Sometimes you all say stuff, you're like, let's not revisit
That,
that one. Let's scrap that
let's
one
not
for the
let's
books.
get rid of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
think
one's not
that
going to help me sling software. Okay.
nah. Yeah, no, it's there's times where I've been like, okay, this is a little bit bold, but I'm gonna try it. It makes me a little. I don't know how this is gonna land, but if it does, it's gonna be awesome. If it doesn't, it'll just land. To be flat on you're flat footed, not a big deal. And I've tried that recently where I've just been like, okay, in my own system, should I, after this demo, should I mark this as encouraged or concerned?
Mhm.
And like straight up ask them how I did in kind of a funny manner as it relates to what they saw. And I've been doing that a handful of times, and now it's like, okay, but it depends on your audience. You have to like read how they've been responding to you throughout the whole demo for some of these more uh, like risque type of moves per se.
Yeah, if you're also brand new at a company, I wouldn't recommend like doing anything super, super risky at first. Like wait till you've earned some trust and credibility to take some more of those innovative chances. Or like Peter said, run it by the other sales counterparts that you have. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this as part of today's demo. Are you okay with it? Is that fine with you? Or run it by your manager. Hey, I've really been thinking about this. I want to incorporate it. Here's what it is. Can I have the liberty to give this a shot on a demo? Maybe they feedback like, you know what? Maybe we'll save that for like a different opportunity, or we could try that elsewhere. Maybe you need a little bit more refinement. But push the bounds there for sure, and collaborate with the people that are around you to figure out what innovative things you do want to try and see what works.
Yeah, that's a great point. Workshop with the fellow teammates. Let them hear it, and then oftentimes you'll come up with something that's even more buttoned up.
We talked about made to stick. This is more like throw it at the wall and figure out what does stick. Like to a certain degree, you want to try to figure it out. You have to test, right? You have to take that sort of experimental mindset and figure out what works, what doesn't work, why does it work? Okay, if I start identifying the why does it work, maybe I'll learn a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, this is definitely an episode I'm going to go back and watch and rewatch and take some notes. Part of me was like, oh, I wish I had my notepad so I could like write stuff down. And then in the middle of it, I was like, it's recorded, bro. Just
Yeah,
you can go back and
we're
watch
recording it. You and I are recording it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, with that, this was our first time having a guest on the pod. We have a couple more guests that we have slated on the docket. We're super excited. I think this was awesome. I learned a lot. I'm sure you learned a lot too, Ryan. And once again, any comments, questions, feedback, drop it in the comments. Shoot us a DM on LinkedIn. It's been awesome hearing from you all. We've had some great insights, and so thank you for those who have been reaching out and giving us feedback. It's been amazing. Any lasting words before we sign off for today, Ryan?
I look forward to the next episode, and we have some exciting guests in the pipeline. We'll still be doing our regular sort of podcast where it's just Samir and I, but we'll also be looping in some awesome guests. You want to be a guest, feel free to reach out to us. Let us know that there's a topic that you want to discuss. Happy to get you on at some point in time, but looking forward to it. So,
Alrighty, everyone. Peace.